After leaving Copenhagen, we have a day at sea before reaching our next destination, Stockholm. Our passage takes us through some lovely scenery, beautiful blue waters dotted with lush green islands. Off in the distance we could see a stream of water. Looking more closely, it looks like there's a figure surfing the top of the arch. But after doing some more research, we found the sculpture is called God Our Father on the Rainbow. Today we're on a tour with Princess Cruises. It starts off with a short drive through the city, as Eva, our tour guide, points out some of the highlights, including the interesting architecture of the Swedish Cultural History Museum. But our first stop is across the street at the Vasa Museum. The Vasa was built in 1628 as one of the flagships of the Swedish Navy, but sank after traveling only 1,400 yards into its maiden voyage. An inquiry into the reason for its sinking came up with a number of flaws, including the basic design being too tall and narrow, not having enough room for adequate ballast, and a last-minute decision to arm it with larger, heavier cannon. The captain was also to blame. Knowing that the ship was top-heavy, he sailed with the lower gun doors open, allowing water to rush in as the ship listed in the light breeze. The warship was richly decorated and carried a total of 64 bronze cannons. As was the custom of the time, the Vasa was highly decorated with sculptures, intending to glorify the king and intimidate their enemies. A complete crew was about 450 men, 400 of which were soldiers. In the sinking, 30 were lost. This is a model of the shipyards, showing how the Vasa was built. It took a small army of craftsmen over 2 years to complete its construction. In 1961, the Vasa was raised and brought to the Wasa shipyards for restoration. But it was 27 years later when she was floated by pontoons into the then flooded dry docks of this museum. The water was then drained, and the construction of the museum was finished around her. The remains of at least 15 bodies were found during the original excavation, even though none of them were identified. In the exhibit Face to Face, skeletal remains and other artifacts were used to recreate 6 of the crew members in extraordinary detail. So it's back on the bus to continue our sightseeing tour of Stockholm.
In earlier days, Sweden and Denmark, we were at war with each other, and that's an important history when we walk around in the old town. Because we're heading over to the old town now to go start with a little walk, and I will show you the surroundings around the palace, and then after that we're entering the palace where we are visiting the Royal Armory, one of the museums.
Arriving at Gamelstan, or Old Town, we have a little time to look around. In the middle of the square is a fountain called Stortorets Brunnem. It was built over a well which dated back to the Middle Ages. It is the center of Stockholm, and all distances in the city are measured from it. Before heading into the armory, Eva, our guide, takes us down some narrow streets to show us a rune stone which dates back to the time of the Vikings. The armory is located in the cellars of the royal palace. In addition to the usual arms, it also has royal chariots and clothing. After visiting the armory, we had a little bit of time to wander the streets of Old Town and to take in a little bit of shopping. After a little bit of shopping at the cruise port, we're back on the ship. Soon after setting sail, we enter the maze of islands which is the Stockholm archipelago. We're off to Finland, arriving in Helsinki. We're on our own today, so we take a princess shuttle into town. The shuttle drops us off at the Esplanade, a tree-lined walkway that'll take us to Market Square. Having arrived at Market Square, we take a break, sitting in front of the statue and fountain of the mermaid Havastamanda. Known locally as Manta, she was erected in 1908, and there was a bit of a scandal due to her seductive nature and nudity, but now she's regarded as the official symbol of Helsinki. Walking through the market, there was some interesting local food. It was a little early for lunch, but I was tempted by the smoked reindeer meatballs. This red poodle's name was Gus, and his owner was selling a book of his pictures as they traveled the world. After finishing up with the market, we're off for an hour-and-a-half harbor sightseeing cruise. After a while, the tour got a little boring, so we headed inside for a bit of refreshment. This is the Fortress Suomenlinna, translated as Castle of Finland. It's now a popular tourist attraction and a favorite for locals to have picnics on a nice sunny day. Speaking of food, the tour guide on the boat recommended us try the covered market. It reminded me of Boston's Faneuil Hall. After spending some time looking for a good lunch, we decided not to be too adventurous, and ended up with just some cheese and bread. Towering over the harbor is the Helsinki Cathedral, our next stop. After seeing the number of stairs, it was decided that Ed and I should head up to the top and see if it was worth the climb. The exterior is impressive with its Greek Revival architecture, and worth noting are the statues of the 12 apostles, cast in zinc. The interior, though, is quite plain, but it does have a nice organ that's only 9 years old. Our last stop of the day is the Uspensky Cathedral, the largest Orthodox church in Western Europe. Its bricks were recycled from an old fortress, and the 13 onion domes represent Christ and the 12 apostles. On our walk back through the Esplanade, we stop and enjoy some local street music. As we leave port, we pass the USS Jason Dunham, an Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer.